Welcome you all to the September meeting of the Nottinghamshire Local Pension Board. What I'd like to start off with some introductions, and if we can start down on my left and then make our way up through this way. So Mark, would you like to?
Mark Ecclestone, Ashford District Council, representing GMB Union.
Thank you. I'm Becky Smethers from Notts Fire and Rescue, and I'm a member representative.
I'm Kieran Guilfoyle. I'm the investments officer, work for the pensions and treasury management team at the council.
Yeah, Nottinghamshire County Councillor, Ed Adair, a member of the board.
Keith Palfreman, I'm Group Manager for Financial Services at the County Council.
Hello, I'm John Clues. I'm the team admin manager for the pensions admin team.
I'm Sarah Stevenson. I'm Group Manager for the Business Services Centre. I work closely with John on the administration side.
Hi, I'm Naya Patel, one of the councillors for Nottingham City Council.
And I'm Sarah Ormond. I'm the clerk to the board today.
And I'm Talan Malefic, Chair and Pensions Team Member. And first and foremost, what I'd like to do is just like to start off with a little note on what's currently happened. Obviously, if you've been following the news, the Bank of England bailout, and a lot of it was focused on pension funds. So what I'd like to do is just simply start off just letting you know that as a fund, we're roughly about 6 billion in assets. And what I've asked Keith to do is just to give us an update, just to find out what our exposure is in terms of the gilts market, and so you can just give us a little bit of an update. I know that at the moment there'll be members might wish to have a deeper questions, but at the moment I think it's going to be very difficult to get those deeper questions until we'll actually find out what the ramifications are in the long term. So Keith, would you like to?
Thank you, Chair. So the issue in the press is mainly related to longest dated index-linked gilts and the fluctuations in price of those. And although the pension fund may have some of those, we are a diversified fund. We have assets across a wide range of asset classes. So there may be an impact, but it will be fairly small. So the reason it's been picked up in the press is related to a number of private sector pension funds, defined benefit schemes, generally ones that are closed, which means they're not taking in new members. What they've done is they've tried to match their assets and liabilities so that they don't have to do a lot of buying and selling of assets. And they've got a strategy which has meant they've bought a lot of these long-dated index-linked gilts. Now, the LGPS, Nottinghamshire and the LGPS is in a very different position. We're an open fund, we're active, we have very diversified portfolios. We don't leverage, which some of these private sector funds do, and we're not engaged in this long-dated index-linked. So we will be impacted by market movements, we will be impacted by some of the exchange rate fluctuations that we've seen, and our valuation may be affected. But we only have a small weighting in bonds. We will be doing a full strategic asset allocation review in January, which might mean that some of the weighting have changed. I can certainly give assurance that the stuff that's been seen in the press doesn't affect the LGPS or Nottinghamshire to anything like the extent it's impacting on some of these private sector funds.
Thank you very much, Keith. Thank you very much for that. Right, we shall go straight back onto our agenda. And we shall start off with the minutes of the last meeting held on the 23rd of June 2022. So if I ask the committee to agree the minutes. Thank you very much. We shall move on to the next item, which is apologies for absence.
I've received apologies from John Raisin.
And just in addition to John Raisin, it's the first meeting is missed since 2016. So obviously some more urgent matters must have come to need for him. Right, our next item is the declaration of interest for members and officers. Do any members or officers present have any disclosable pecuniary interest to declare? Do any members or officers present have any private interests, pecuniary or non-pecuniary, to declare? No, take it as no. Right, now the next item, which is quite nice, is to note to appoint Councillor Dr. Naya Patel as a representative from the Nottingham City Council on the board. And we've had a bit of problem in the past about getting members from the city council to come. So it's quite nice that we've got yourself. And also the appointment of Becky Smithers from Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue as an employer representative. Welcome. Right. So I'd like you to note that Councillor Sally Langford was the previous city council, but I don't think she ever made a meeting. So that's great. So next item is the local pension board LGPS update.
Right, thank you, Chair. I'm John Clues, and I'm presenting this item on behalf of John Raisin. Just to say that John asked me just to present this. This is a general update of the LGPS for over the last since the last meeting was that back in May, and really picks up just a number of areas and subject matter that we like to point out to board members. And some of the, I'll just go through very briefly. There are some, the first part of the report picks up developments in relating to Department of Levelling Up, where there are a number of consultations ongoing around various things, climate, the levelling up, investment pooling, and these are being undertaken over the coming months. And it's really just a position statement about that. So if there's any questions that you have on any of those particular points, then we can try and answer them. But generally, it's covered in the report. As I say, there's a point about investment pooling, which my finance colleagues are more aware of than myself. Again, also climate reporting, which has been high on the agenda, and has been high on the agenda in relation to the Pensions Committee, and that provides an update around the governance strategy, risk management, and metric targets for that particular political item.
Sorry, Chair, can I just say on that item, so working with LGPS Central, our pooling partner, the pension fund is well in advance, so we're already doing TCFD reporting. We've taken a number of reports to committee. So although there's legislation coming through which will require LGPS funds to do it, just so you're aware, we're already doing this. So we're very well ahead of the game in terms of that.
Thanks, Keith. But there's also in point 4 of the report, there's a particular item around the good governance and the LGPS, and this really just gives an update of where the LGPS is and where the Scheme Advisory Board is in relation to good governance. We are awaiting some advice from DLUCH around the good governance, and we're expecting that sometime towards the end of the year, maybe into next year. But things have been quite they've moved out their dates from time to time. But the good governance, just for members who don't really know, just try and pick that up. This is around how the LGPS is going to change its governance across the pension funds, and there may be some recommendations that the fund may have to undertake in terms of how governance is managed into the future. And that means looking at structures. And there has been discussion at Pensions Committee about looking at administration structures, things of that nature. But there's a whole number of recommendations that were made by the Scheme Advisory Board to DLUHC about governance, and we're waiting for a response from DLUHC in respect of those recommendations, and then that will be taken forward by the fund. So I'll take any questions on that. Then the point 5 is around age discrimination and the McLeod, McLeod project, as we commonly refer to. The pension fund is undertaking a lot of work. We've appointed a project manager and a data officer, and we're talking to scheme employers around collecting data and checking data for us to undertake the recalculations and the remedy that is going to be provided by the government. So we've contacted some of the big employers in the fund. We've contacted the fire service, obviously the county council, the police, and then we're going to move down to some of the smaller employers. But we will be talking to them over the coming months. We've also contacted the city as well, and we're working with those. So we're well on the way to collecting that data, but it's going to be quite a difficult piece of work, to be honest. It's going to take quite a bit of resource, and it's going to take quite a bit of time. This is happening across the whole of the LGPS, and funds are in different levels of where they are. Fortunately for the Nottinghamshire, we did actually continue to collect data after the changes in 2014. So we have some of the data that some funds probably don't have and are having to collect from scratch. So we're in a bit of a middle ground, and we'll bring reports back to committee and the board when we know a bit more, and certainly when we know what the remedy is going to be. Okay. So I think that covers sort of the main topics that are in John's report, and happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Take it out, papers and ups.
I think-
Is that right?
I think it'll take a little while because of the change of structures in government. Getting back to get grips with this is going to take some time. So
Absolutely.
that's that's going to be a delaying factor.
Yeah.
They might have an ambition, but I doubt if they'll achieve it.
I think you might be right there, Councillor. Okay.
Thank you very much. Well, in that case, I'd like to propose that we follow the recommendations that set out on page 10 of the agenda pack. Do I have a seconder for that?
Okay.
Oh, there you go. Mark. Whilst John isn't with us, if members have got any questions, you can forward those to John Clues or Keith. We might be able to answer further questions on that. Right, we'll now move on to a vote on the recommendation. Can I have votes for? Okay, all right, take it. There's no. Yeah, that's. So the vote has been carried. We haven't got any abstentions or any votes against. Shall go straight on to the next item, which is the Pension Administration Performance Report, and this is going to be yourself, John.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I'll take you through this report just for new members. We'll produce a report after year end. So this one relates to 2021-22 year end, and I'll take you through it, and then we can have a discussion. If you've got any questions, I'll try to answer those questions for you. So the purpose of the report is to provide, obviously, an update on the performance of the pension administration for the financial year ending 31st of March 2022. Pensions administration has faced another challenging year with, and as I've just mentioned, the progress of the McLeod judgment and the setting up of the project for the recalculation of benefits, to the changes in legislation and the TPR introducing new transfer processes for pension funds. Along with the fallout of COVID, we're continuing with members considering their pension futures. So there's been a lot of people, deferred members in particular, thinking about their futures and whether they want to take their benefits earlier. So we've seen quite a spike in that kind of work. But clearly, this is also valuation year, which has required the pension team to review data and to prepare for the data be provided to the scheme actuary, which we have now done. So, as I said, for new members of the pension board, the report highlights the main activities of the administration team and what we undertake and how the administration team is organised along with its resources. The report provides the cost of the administration for 2021 and how we are benchmarked against other funds. However, 2022 data has yet to be finalised, and this was for CITFA, because it unfortunately it runs a year late, and CITFA have been a little bit later since COVID, so we're not providing our 2021-22 data until next week, and then we'll get a report. So it always runs slightly late. So this is 2021 data. Data quality and improvement continues to be high on the pension regulator's agenda, and work is ongoing to improve our data as we've seen a significant improvement in our common data, but a drop in our conditional data, which we hope will show an improvement once we're able to run our data reports August, September, and we do that towards the end of this month. We're going to do an update of our data, and then we'll run our reports, and I'll be reporting that to the pension regulator over the next 6 weeks or so. As I say, we'll be providing that to the pension regulator. The data quality report is also linked to our data improvement work stream, and we're continually undertaking with partners a data improvement programme, which we're required to do by the pension regulator, but because of all these national projects like McLeod, and we'll come on to talk about pension dashboards, we need to be working on our data continuously. So in my report, I've put some information about the current membership and the 3 main classes of members, which totals around 149,000. This has increased, and this is really due to transfers into the pension fund from other LGPS schemes and academies, plus also just more members being auto enrolled into the fund. So we've had a number of trusts transfer in over the last year, and that has created quite a bit of work for us. So the current number of active employers, though, is down to 281, which is down from 292, and this will continue to fluctuate. And the reason for that is we've consolidated a number of our scheme employers into single employers. So we used to show academy trusts as single employers, and so you'd get 2 or 3 schools in academy trust. We've now brought them as a single employer, so we can deal with and effectively be more efficient in terms of transferring data in from those scheme employers. So we see we're doing that constantly, so it does actually fluctuate. So I've also, in the report, you'll see I've included a list of new employers and the type of employer body. I've set out complaints and employer disputes up to the 31st of March 2022. The most general complaint is around calculation of benefits, ill health retirements, along with a number of transfer cases. There still continues to be complaints raised in relation to one of our AVC providers, which is the Prudential, although we have seen some improvement from last year. And since I wrote this, and I said, oh, there's been some improvement, there's currently been a bit of a dip in their performance, and we are due to try and have a conversation meeting with them about that. However, I'd just like to point out that the issue has been raised nationally through the LGPS Scheme Advisory Board, and there is further national monitoring of their performance, and the pension regulator is also aware. Just for new members' information, it's about 2 years ago now. Seems like an age. The Prudential introduced a new pension admin system, and we had a lot of trouble sending data to the Prudential in terms of individuals' AVCs. Payments were going astray, and they were losing records and various things like that. And over the last 2 years, they've been obviously trying to put this right, but that has impacted on funds, because we're obviously the front end of that process, and members have been coming to us, not being able to access their AVC funds and various aspects of that. So it's been a bit of a torrid time with the Prudential, and like I say, it was raised with the pensions regulator. They actually self-reported to the pensions regulator, and the Scheme Advisory Board had them into one of their meetings to have a discussion about their performance. So all the funds have been affected, and it's not just Nottinghamshire.
Okay, Becky Smethers, can I just ask who's responsible for their data? Does that fall down to this fund, or the LGPS fund, or are they separately responsible?
Well, it's rather complicated actually, because what's happened is previously the AVC providers we used to work in partnership. What actually happened is there was a change. They see us, the trustees, so they send us all the information about the individuals. And we have really almost become the AVC administrator in that. And so everything comes through the pension admin team. So if there's issues that come to us and they go through to the Prudential, or the Prudential send them to us, and don't directly, or not always directly, talk to the individual owner of the AVC. So they are responsible, and employers make the payovers of the AVCs to the Prudential. They all log in. They've got a portal of which people can go and have a look. But any queries or issues come through us.
But they made that change without consultation with the LGPS.
They did.
They just changed their operating model. So it pushes additional admin work back to the fund.
And so there were people whose let me find an example. So there were people who were wanted to have a look at their AVC benefits, and they could see that they got missing contributions, and there were a number of people who wanted to take their AVCs, but we couldn't give them a value because the contributions were missing on their Prudential records. They've actually got past that now, and they thankfully that's sort of they've rectified those issues, because employers were making the contribution or paying the contributions over, but they weren't being recorded on the records. So we had in 2021-22, we had no end of complaints, or the fund was trying to address these issues. Like I say, it's got better. They've had a little bit of a dip, and what also happens is when members go to the Prudential, they ask questions, and because the Prudential are dealing with thousands of funds, they don't necessarily understand all the LGPS regulations, which is slightly different. So members get told different things, and then they come to us, so they complain to us because they've been told by the Prudential they could have this and have that, and under the regulations they're not allowed. So it creates that difficulty, I would say.
Do they provide the same support for all LGPS, or have we sort of contracted them out for Nottinghamshire?
Nottinghamshire, we've got a contract in place with the Prudential and with Scottish Widows. So we've got two providers. Some of the other funds have Prudential. Some of them have chosen to use other ABC providers. Okay. So we've got the Prudential and Scottish Widows. Quite a few have, but some of the funds use other.
Does that impact on your dashboard? Do you have to include that information, or do they? You've said they've got a dashboard themselves. Is that something that members will have to go to their dashboard, and then your information on purely the LGPS contribution?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. So as an AVC, if you hold an AVC, you can go to the Prudential. They'll give you a login to their system. You can have a look at what your contributions are. When somebody then wants to take their AVC as part of their retirement, they won't provide it directly to the individual. They'll provide it to the fund, because we have to use it in part of our calculations in terms of people's retirements. Once we've then done that, we'll then obviously write them a letter saying your retirement benefits are X, Y, and Z plus your Prudential AVC. And then generally, a person that retires, we will pay over the AVC plus. We will inform the Prudential to pay over the AVC. The Prudential then send a cheque, and we will obviously pay the LGPS benefits.
Complicated.
This is quite complicated. And when you start to have difficulties where people's benefits haven't been applied properly, then it creates turmoil and difficulty in people's retirements. Thankfully, that has improved.
Okay. Mark, you got a question?
That's okay, Chair. Jonathan's already answered it. But we're around suppliers for members, that's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I think this also highlights probably the reason why the Prudential decided not to go through the LGPS. So it's got to chuck all the additional admin onto.
I think the problem is as well is that the ABC providers don't see it as a profitable position, because because I think we've got around 2,500 members with an AVC. To them, that's small beer, really, and so they've passed on quite a lot of their administration to the funds. That's the best way I can describe it, really. Okay, so I'll just continue. So also, one of the other things that we continue to receive and when I wrote this, we were continuing to receive subject access requests from claims companies seeking information relating to members who've transferred benefits out, and subsequently, some of those members subsequently lost their pensions due to, and I say, possible fraud. Again, this is an issue across the LGPS and is being monitored by the LGA. I have to say requests have reduced over the last number of months, and any claims that are being made, the fund is responding robustly to them. So, like I say, it has died off a little bit, but they tend to go in waves. And some of these claims companies do actually send things out in the local press and things like that. Have you lost your this, that, and the other? And we do get spikes from time to time. Year-end activities then. In terms of our year-end activities, the report shows there's been an increase in the number of accurate returns from scheme employers by the deadline, which has been really good. And I can report that all returns were received with 99% balanced and loaded into the administration system this year. We do have outstanding queries with scheme employers, which are with scheme employers, and these, however, need to be, and we have worked with them to try and complete them. There are a number of scheme employers who we will be or are charging because of late returns. There's a number of academy trusts and a larger scheme employer that will be receiving a bill from us. Just in terms of the performance data in the report, performance data shows 4 quarters of the completed processes against our SITFA KPIs. We use SITFA as our benchmarking, and we choose to do this. As you'll see, deferment calculations are always a challenge. The table shows that we don't tend to meet our SITFA benchmark on deferments, and the reason for that is deferments come really a long way down the line in terms of priority. Our main priority is obviously paying people's pensions, dealing with deaths, and dealing with transfers, and we just have to put our deferments back. So it's not good news, but that's the reality. And I would say probably a majority of funds would report in the same way, but we need to look at that a bit better and to try and address it, which hopefully we will be doing. We will have to do that as part of the pension dashboard implementation. So just moving on then, the fund's performance average against our KPIs around 66.8%. It was 66.2% from the previous year. This has been impacted by an increase in retirements, as I said earlier. We've seen an increase in deaths. Certainly over COVID, we saw something in the region of 13 or 14% increase over the normal deaths. We've also seen an increase in deaths in service for some apparent reason, and whereas we used to get something like 1 a month, we've seen 2 or 3 a month, which has had an it doesn't sound a lot, but it is a significant change. That's sort of started to drop off now, thankfully. But I haven't looked at these figures, but that does take a lot of resource. Transfers have also been impacted by changes in legislation. So last November, there was a change in legislation where we had to add processes into our transfers, and this was mainly due to this was for actually further checking of transfers before transfers were allowed to progress. This has elongated the process. It takes longer. I think the IFAs who are advising on transfers are tending to get frustrated because we're only dealing directly with the member rather than with the IFA. It elongates the process and obviously impacts on their profitability, let's say, or their fees. So
It's worth adding, isn't it? Those additional checks are for greater protection for the member.
Yes.
Because of the volume of scams, etc. And often, you know, these companies are selling something or attempting to sell a dream that, you know, just isn't going to materialize as well. So whilst it elongates the process, I think it is for the benefit ultimately for the person who's considering it. Some will still go ahead anyway.
Yeah. So, and on top of that, the pension regulator has issued advice on scams and how to deal with scams. We've issued information through the benefit statements. We did that last year and have subsequently done it again this year. We'll continue to do that. There is information on the scheme website about scams. So we do what we can in terms of that, but we just do what we can, really. I think it's fair to say.
And I think in terms of scams, I think there's been a few television programs on it actually, which has been highlighting how.
And the regulators put out some say adverts, but promotions in terms of be careful with your pension. So moving on, just to show as part of that. So table 1 of my report, it shows this year that we've seen an increase of sort of around 35% in the number of KPIs processes completed. So I think this just shows the amount of activity coming through the team. And table 2 shows an increase of activities of 7%. And what those two tables are is the KPIs. We've seen an increase, but overall we've seen an increase of total activities going through the pension admin system. So this isn't all the activities that we do, but we can measure it by through the system. As I said right at the beginning, there continues to be an increase in deferred benefits. This is where members, once past 55, seek to release their pension benefits, and I suspect that will probably increase as we go into the next financial year and the cost of living crisis. And I've already mentioned, but just to point out that member death processes still remain a challenge. So that's a brief. That's a brief scape through my report, and happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Mark?
Mark Explore, Jonathan. I mean, you spoke about it at last meeting, and I know it's nationwide, but I don't know you were trying to get a recruit because you struggled to recruit. Have you been successful regarding that?
We've been through a recruitment process. We were looking to recruit around 10 posts. We used Indeed, which was a
job board.
Thanks. It's a job board, and we recruited 4 people into the pensions admin team. We've recruited another person externally to our employer support and compliance team, which was to help support working with scheme employers. So we have managed to recruit the majority of those who've come in from into the admin team have been recruited internally. We had one person that we recruited from external. We've yet to go back out and re-recruit, which Sarah and I had a conversation about earlier in the week. But we're trying to manage the training of the new people, plus also trying to bring new people in. So to answer your question properly, it was partially successful. We've still got a lot more to do and to try and recruit to, and it's been a difficult environment.
I'd just add something there. Sorry, Sarah Stevenson. I think from the recent recruitment campaign where we were looking to bring members into the team at varying levels, I think it's fair to say that whilst we have appointed 4 roles, they are at our entry point, and that there isn't the people, or doesn't appear to be the people in the market who are moving from one LGPS to another. So I think one of the things John and I have talked about is, whilst we have vacancies across a number of different grades, actually what we could do is hold some of those, bring more people in at entry level, hold them against more senior roles. Then actually, as we train them and they gather and gain experience, then actually what we do is we have a ring-fenced recruitment to the more senior role. So that actually what you do is you feed in at the bottom, you train them up, you get them into our way of doing processes, our interpretation of the regs, and then they have almost that internal progression route. And I think certainly when we look at people who have progressed through our structure, they have initially started, there are the odd 1 or 2, but they have started at that entry point, and then they have gone on. With the recent recruits, out of the 4, 3 are coming from elsewhere within the Business Services Centre. They bring with them a set of skills. So we've got somebody who's coming from payroll, so they bring that experience of how to look up salary information, etc. We have somebody who's coming from the Business Hub, who has been used to setting up new starters, setting up various other processes. Got somebody who's moving from our accounts payable function, and again that individual, when we've had capacity within AP, we have utilised those individuals to do some of the basic administration. So they are coming at probably 1 step above the very, very entry point as well. And I think that's quite a positive thing, that we are seeing that internal movement as well. But I do think, there aren't necessarily the people out there. We have to grow our own from that entry point into our structure.
I think just to add to that, I think it's quite significant that the numbers of people that we did actually interview, I think we found it very difficult to get the right skills from the people who were actually applying. There is some work ongoing nationally to look at apprenticeship scheme and various other. It's been highlighted across the LGPS basically, and so nationally we are looking at what support can be had for the LGPS, because it is very difficult. The pension team are under quite a lot of pressure. They have a lot of work, and it is sometimes very difficult for them from time to time. I have to say that's the way it is.
Thank you. I've got just a couple. The first one is on page 28, and it relates to table 23. And on there, it's looking at the number of leavers for 2022. I know that some of the leavers have come through the academies and consolidation.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, has there been any other reasons why people have kind of, some of the
Some of the
organisations?
Yeah, we had, I think it's a good example. I forget what they're called now. Yeah, what was it?
Not Academy Trust, John.
No, my mind's gone complete, but, you know, the employer that we were dealing with, what were they called?
Robin.
You know,
I can't remember which one you mean.
yeah, so anyway, I can't remember what they mean, but there have been a number of funds that, a number of employers that have sought to leave the fund, and that was because of where they perceive as one of them went bankrupt. I wouldn't say bankrupt, but closed. What were they called?
I'll look it up.
I can't remember what they were called.
Matter.
No, it doesn't matter. So they've chosen to. They find it's expensive, and they can't afford it. So they've left the fund. One of them actually ceased trading and moved some of its operations to the West Midlands in terms of that was around child support. Child support is one of the yes, sorry, Faith in Families. Thank you. So Faith in Families left the fund. There are always employers moving in and out, where scheme employers like Academy Trusts are changing their provision in terms of catering and cleaning. And so some of those are shown in these figures. So that there have been some that have left due to closure of their activities, and some due to changes in provision within some of the Academy Trust, mainly. That's where the main.
But I think the overall membership is up. So I think you have to look at the two things, look at scheme employers and actual members of the scheme.
And clearly there are some employers who have chosen to cease letting new members come into the scheme, and then once they come to a position where there's no new members, and that then drives a cessation with that scheme employer. There are a number of employers that are in that position, and so we monitor that quite closely. And in fact, there are a group of scheme employers that will be talking to our finance colleagues and the scheme actuary as we start to come to complete the valuation in terms of how we manage that. Okay.
Okay. Right. On that, what we can do is we've got the recommendation, which is that the Nottinghamshire Local Pension Board consider the performance of the administration of the pension fund and the continued development of systems and processes that will improve the service to members of the fund. So, is there anybody who wishes, well, I suppose really, do I have a seconder first? Thank you very much. And the next one is, if we have a vote on that, can I have a vote, please? Those for? Thank you very much. No, I'll take that. It's carried as we've got no against or abstention. Right, next one is again, John, do you want to drink or something?
I've got one.
I think
you're getting a bit bored of mine.
Right, the next item on the board, again, John is going to present, is on the local government pension scheme proposed pension dashboard, which you mentioned a little about, and Becky did ask a question about in relation to. But before we do that, is it possible for us to go on to page 4 and propose that we'd like to look on the recommendation on page 40 of agenda pack.
Mm.
And if I could have a seconder, if you wish me, I can read out what the recommendation is. A recommendation that the Nottinghamshire Pension Board consider the implications of the pension dashboard program and agree to receive further update reports as the project becomes clearer as the national program progresses. And number 2, agree to receive an update report on the resource requirements of the pension fund to enable the implementation of the pension dashboard program. Can I have a second for that?
Okay.
Right. John, if you'd like to take us.
I'll try and make this a brief chat. I'll try and make it interesting as well.
Man of the hour, John.
Pardon?
Man of the hour.
Yes, thank you. Just before I start, this we thought that this was the time to sort of bring this to the attention of the pension board, and a report will be going to pensions committee as well to really highlight this. So the National Pension Dashboard Programme, it's been designed to sort of bring about a landmark change, really. I think that's how they describe it, in the way individuals can access information about their pensions. So I suppose for the first time, savers, as it's described, will be able to see most of their future pension information securely online and in one place. So that's what they're attempting to do. So the programme has been ongoing for a period of time. Obviously, it's a national programme, but it's now gathering a bit of momentum, and that's why we felt that it was necessary to bring it to your attention, because it's now going to be involving the LGPS. Much of the detail, I have to say, is still in development, and the building of the dashboard itself is initially in testing at the moment, and some of the bigger funds are involved in this testing. So I think one of them is the Manchester Pension Fund, which is a large LGPS. So the intention is for dashboards to support better planning for retirement, and help individuals, like I say, reconnect with their pension pots that they may have lost over time. The government, as part of this programme, established the Money and Pension Service, which we call MAPS, and this is to provide a non-commercial dashboard which will connect to pension scheme providers, so to the private sector and the public sector. So to make the dashboards work, the multiple parties will need to connect to enable individuals to sort of search for their pension information. So it's sort of like it's been described as like a telephone system whereby various requests come in through the telephone system, and various information goes out. So individuals sort of will navigate to a dashboard, and we all know types of dashboards. You've got what types of dashboard when you go onto your bank and things like that. So you'll be able to go onto a dashboard, and I think there's going to be a choice of the types of dashboards that you can actually link to, and you go onto that dashboard and you submit a request to view your pension information. The dashboard process will request, with the appropriate authority and identity verification, will request information from all connected pension schemes and providers. And that information is sent to those various connected things, and that's passed to us. So Becky, you might want to to know what pension information we've got for you. So you will go onto the dashboard, you'll ask, well, what's my what information you've got on my pension. That will come into us, and what we will then have to do is to look at that request and send a request back through this. And it's going to be called an ISP provider. It's quite complicated, actually. ISP provider, and that will be passed back to you, and it will sit on your on the dashboard that you've chosen to use for a period of time, and you'll be able to see your information in respect of your pension. What that information is going to be as yet, we're not quite sure. So, but it will be information of some sort in relation to your pension benefits. So, so let me just, sorry. So in terms of that, right. So the scheme then registers any match, which is then used by the dashboard, and there's an interface, and it retrieves like I say, the individual's pension information and returns it for temporary display on the dashboard. Who needs to comply with that? Well, the Pension Scheme Act of 2021 made it mandatory that pension providers sign up to this. So it's anyone over 100 members, and obviously this includes the LGPS. The onboarding deadline for the service is September 2024.
Sorry, Jonathan, can you repeat that? Sorry, September
2024 is the initial date. I suspect that might get pushed out to a later date, but that's what has been reported. And I have to say, it's been recognised that the scale of the work on public service pension schemes in response to a number of these national issues has been recognised, because what they're saying is we've got McLeod, we've still got GMP reconciliation, and we've still got our own plans in terms of improvement. So, like I say, 2024 could actually change. Just to give you a bit of information on what we've done so far. So, following the progress, we followed the progress of the dashboard program. We've been going to meetings, webinars, and various things to make sure that we really sort of understand what's going on. We've identified a project manager within the pensions team to undertake those activities. As we've already said, data improvement has been ongoing for some time, but we've got more to do. And obviously, we're looking at our resources and reviewing our resources, given what we've just discussed about the difficulty in recruiting. There are various other activities that the fund will need to do to sort of get us up to date. So we're going to have to look at moving to monthly returns for data. And we have some plans in place, and we'll be talking to our pension administration system provider, Civica, about implementation of monthly returns. That will have an impact with the scheme employers, because scheme employers will need to be involved in that piece of work, and we'll look at priorities in terms of those employers that will bring on board first. Obviously, the best thing to do would be to bring on the larger scheme employers. So they're the kind of things that we're actually doing. I'm sure that doesn't answer all the questions. The report wasn't really intended to. It was really just to give you a flavour of where we are, what's happening, and the work that the fund will need to undertake going forward. I have to say, data is the main issue for us. So the work that we had already started with Intellica on data improvement is going to be valuable, but we've also got to do a lot more. So that's the name of the game, I'm afraid.
Mark, questions?
Thank you for that, Jonathan. Yeah, benefits on both sides. It's just more than an observation than a question.
Yeah.
Consider, obviously, we deal, no disrespect to anybody, we deal with people at all different kinds of level of education. And when you talk about pensions, people tend to freeze.
Yeah.
So it's user friendly. That's the word that I like to use.
Yeah.
So, because if the person can't obviously get that information out, if it's not friendly enough, and that's when the confusion lies. The other one I'd like to ask, Jonathan, is before it does go live, or at some stage, is it possible to have a demo on this scheme?
Yeah. Once we know all the setup, then clearly we can bring further information for
But the design of the national dashboard is not our design. It is the whatever the government sign off. But yes,
but clearly we can show
you how it functions.
As part of that, we'll have to do some communication out anyway, I suspect.
You'd expect there to be a national programme of comms, a bit like there was with, when the government brought in auto enrolment. You saw all of the lead-in of those adverts, etc. There'll be a national programme.
I haven't seen anything yet in relation to communication from the national, but the size of the programme, I suspect that will come at some point. So I'll keep you updated. Yeah. Once we know more, I'll bring some future reports, and if I can show you bits and bobs, then clearly we will do that. But I'll keep you up to date.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it sounds like it's still quite chunky in that it's retiring your input. It's not very automated. So
to be honest, I don't know. What's being decided at the moment is how we're going to search for individuals' records and things. So what information you as a member might need to provide to search for that data. What I understand, and at the moment, is you put your request in, it's sent down these lines, and it'll come to this sort of almost like a junction box, and then it goes out to the various schemes, and we're asked to almost search on the basis of what those requests are going to be.
So would it give members the opportunity to look at options of different retirement dates, for example?
No, it's just purely presenting back to you what pension provision you have, maybe in other schemes. But for me, this is where I'm sort of like I've got a question mark over it. So if you've always been a local government officer, from when you came into employment, through to now, whether you've moved around employments, but they've all been within the LGPS, you should be getting your annual benefit statement. So I'm not sure if that was the scenario, you as a member would be going to the national dashboard, because you would already, I think you would already know all your pension provision was somewhere else. You obviously have people who have provision both in a local government or in private schemes, and they may have lost touch with where that pension provision is. I can see a scenario with somebody in that situation coming to the national dashboard and saying, where have I got pots around? I think one of the other things for us is we know we have people who have a pot that they could be having benefits paid out by us, but they choose not to because they may be getting in receipt of benefit, and actually if they drew on their pension here, it would affect the benefits they're being paid out. So I'm not sure all of the sort of like all the I's and T's are crossed as to, you know, who will and who won't come into this dashboard and what the benefit ultimately will be. But I guess as it gets up and running, we'll start to get that feel of what's the amount of requests that we get, how we then may want to communicate to our own members how they use it versus, you know, the benefit of the ABS. I think it's sort of like too high level at this stage for us to really understand. Then, you know, how do we service those requests, and what's the overhead it puts on our administration service, again, and what's the benefit that's coming out of it. I don't think it feels very tangible.
No, I think the majority of members who are going to use it all will be deferred, I suspect, of where we've either lost touch or they've lost touch. They've moved. They haven't told us their new address. We've not been able to locate them, and because we get requests now for people saying, "Oh, I had a pension with you 30, 40 years ago. You know, what information?" Generally, we've refunded that pension for those people over that years, but there will be some, and that's where the majority, I think, of those questions are going to come from.
So are there any intentions on building more of a local dashboard to allow members to go? Because I know other services do.
Well, yes,
I've seen them at
You mean a member portal?
Self-serve. Yes, that's our intention, and our basis to being able to move there is our data improvement program, which we've been running for a couple of years, because you've got to have your data right. Because if somebody comes in to run, say, an estimate, because ultimately we want them to be able to run their own estimates, but if the data isn't up to date, they'll come so far through the process and they'll have to drop back into the office anyway. So the fundamental work stream of our transformation program is data improvement, which we'll report an update to Pensions Committee in November, and then subsequently we'll bring that report here. So, you know, we have done an extensive piece of work on data improvement. But yes, we've got our scheme employers portal, and our plan is ultimately to give our members of Nottinghamshire access into their own portal, so you'll be able to tell us or go onto your record, update your address. That would be how we would issue annual benefit statements. Ultimately, rather than posting a hard copy out, we would hope to ultimately enable you to say, okay, so I want an estimate of benefits when I'm 55, 60, 65, 68, etc. But you would actually run that yourself, and it would present those figures back. Once you've decided when you wanted to retire, then you could initiate that retirement through the portal. But we're probably, you know, some way off getting to that point at this moment in time. But that's our ultimate plan, yes.
What's your aim for that timeline?
Well,
we keep getting hit by national projects, so it sort of like impacts because we're given statutory deadlines for, you know, national dashboards, and you know, at the moment we haven't got enough people to service the national and what we intend to do ourselves. And then, you know, you've got to work out, you know, like McLeod is collecting data. We're collecting data for our own improvement. Then we want to move to monthly turns. So while some of these feed in together, we ultimately have to sit down and work out what's the priority. So it's not easy to give you a time frame, but before John and I retire, probably.
Oh, yeah.
What's
Quick as that.
what's the main priority, I think, to get that working is to move to monthly returns.
Yeah, and that helps improve data in itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But there is going to be information sent out to scheme employers. So unfortunately, we're going to have to do two things. We're going to have to go out for McLeod data. And as I said earlier, we've started to do that and talk to them. So talk to the fire service. But also there's going to be a request for separate data for data improvement, and which is unfortunately it's two separate pieces of data, so it has to be done separately. So, and that once we get that back and loaded that into the system, that will then be checked. In the time, we'll also go out with. We're waiting for an update in the admin system that's coming in November, and then we'll start to roll out, fingers crossed, monthly returns to the bigger employers. And once we start to do that, that will then, as we sort of trying to turn the dirty water off, and so we'll turn the dirt, and the bath water will become cleaner as we turn that dirty water off. We'll start getting data on time and accurate, because no matter what we do at the end of financial year, when we do our year-end return, we still have issues that employers are sending incorrect data, and we literally continue to check that data. And like Sarah says, other things come in.
John, been sitting this for the last 6 years. But often it doesn't improve very much. So.
I wouldn't say it hasn't improved, Councillor. I think we have made. I think if you look at the one of my charts, it has improved. We've got more
what
coming
I'm
in at time.
The employers or the members of the scheme are not providing the data.
Yeah.
They're just not.
No,
You got the system. You got this. And they are not providing the data.
No.
And because they're not providing the data, you can't do what you need to do.
Yes.
That's good.
Now, well, 10 years have been missed into that.
Yeah. I think, Councillor Dare, that's an absolutely valid point. And I think, you know, what we see happening in scheme employers is the situation over where they consider what is their responsibility. And I think there's a big issue that scheme employers, you know, when they're having to make their own savings, they're cutting the resource, which means that they can't satisfy their requirements under the regulation. And I think, you know, what we have to start to move to is actually performance managing our scheme employers, and actually where we should get to is actually reporting on the performance of individual scheme employers, and then it's for both the pension board and the pension committee in their sort of position to be able to perhaps, you know, write to a scheme employer to say, you know, they're impacting on the delivery of the administration side. They'll pay across their investments, but the contributions, but what they're not doing is following through with you know, their data, and monthly returns should drive some of that as well.
And you shouldn't be sitting here apologising for them and apologising that you're doing this and doing that.
Yes,
Making excuses for them.
Yeah.
Because it's not you.
No.
That's the administration of the pension fund. It's they're not supplying the data that you require from them, so therefore you can't do your job.
Yes, and John said, you know, there are a number of scheme employers that we will be issuing fines to. Perhaps we are now in a position, and should be in a position, where we actually start to name these scheme employers, and actually under, again, the regulations, you know, there is the breaches regulation, and actually I think perhaps we in the past have not been in a position to report scheme employers, where perhaps we need to really start to push forward on that now.
What we started to do, as we've recruited to the employer support and compliance team, is we're starting to do employer audits. So what that means is members of the team are going out, not going out, but are contacting employers and talking and looking at their provision of data, what they're doing, making sure that they've got their discretions up to date, making sure that they're providing their data accurately, looking at any issues that we've had with their data. So we have started to do that as we've recruited, and that will be ongoing.
I think that you should be coming to back to the board or to the committee, either, whichever one's appropriate.
Yeah.
And say to them, these are the difficulties we are having in administrating the scheme, instead of sitting there talking about what you're trying to do to correct the work of what other people should be doing and delivering into your hands.
And I think I totally agree with you on that, because I think one of the things is, and it was mentioned earlier, is the fact that some of the employers themselves don't really realize how important it is to get this information into us. They assume that either it will happen one way or another, or it could be the fact that a key member of staff has left and has not been able to pass that information on. So when it does come to us, we're sort of now having to chase them to ensure that they do what they need to. And sometimes it's the fact that, if that person has left, that person has left and that information is not passed on, and we have to chase them up. But we do know who the main people are, which is monitored, and hence why they're now getting the fines. And obviously the fines will increase the more they don't pay.
I can bring you some info. I'll bring some information on that once we've issued. What I can say, one of the difficulties is certainly the academy trusts, for example. What happens with them is they have a set of staff who work with on the pensions data and stuff like that. Those people move on, you get new people, and you're starting all over again. Hence why we ask for additional resource in the employee support and compliance team to try and address that. Some of the payroll providers that some of these employers have also change, and that then changes issues. And then I have to say, but Councillor Dare's absolutely right in terms of this bigger employer, and I won't mention it. We've, over the last 2-3 years, their year-end data has come in at the last minute, even though we've worked with them and threatened them and fined them. And the reason that is because their strategy in relation to their payroll provision was rubbish, basically. And they've now taken that back in house, and fingers crossed, hopefully next year that will be that issue will be resolved. But like I say, Councillor Dare's absolutely right. We shouldn't be, making excuses for them. We should be just reporting them.
Of course, ultimately, it's the members that.
Absolutely.
Because you've not got the accurate data.
Absolutely.
And the members will come to the pension fund, they won't go to the employer. So that and again, there's a cost there, isn't there, to that?
Okay, Chair. If there's any more questions on the dashboard?
Any more questions on the dashboard? I've got just one, but it's wrapped up, which is obviously one of the things is looking at data security. Because if you've got people logging in from afar, how will the dashboard ensure that it is I who's actually putting it in and not somebody who knows my details?
Well, that's a very good question, Chair. I'm assured through the project that data security is utmost in the programme's mind. They are determining at the moment on what the search criteria is going to be for the dashboard, and that will become evident as part of the rollout. I am assured that they're putting the appropriate security into place, but we'll know more when they roll that out. But
I guess you'll see very similar security levels as you currently do if you have a government gateway account that it's got multi-factor authentication. texts you a code or it emails you a code, you know, that expires within 10 minutes. It will have done all that verification about you prior to you being authorised as having an account as well. You know, the government do hold a vast amount of data on individuals already, so they will use some of that mechanism, you know, whether they, you know, connect into passport data, national insurance information, that type of thing. But it will have some form of multi-factor authentication.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to the recommendation. And can we have a vote on this? Take it as carries. Right, we shall go on to the next item. And again, this has been one that John Reason would have presented, and it's going to be John Clues, I believe, and this is the report on the local pension board.
Yeah,
Training plan.
this is really the pension board training plan. It's really, the report stands as it is really. One of the I was talking to John yesterday, and what in terms of the training, and I think it's more there. This is what we need to do in relation to training of board members, current board member. Oh, sorry, the older board members have gone through training. And what we need to have really is and what I made a bit of a note, is a training needs analysis in relation to people's understanding of the LGPS, and then determining what training needs to happen for the board. Clearly, over the year, there are various information that's passed around. There are the actuaries actually provide training for board members, and there is various training that we will identify and pass out to board members over the coming year. The reason we haven't actually, or the reason John's not been able to put a full training plan in place was clearly we'd got new members coming on. And with the time frame, he felt that he wanted to wait until we'd got some new members and then put a plan into place. But one of the first things is the training needs analysis, which John and I talked about.
And just for the new members, you've got 6 months in which to be able to complete your training. However, there is a lot of support on the pensions regulators website, and additional information that John will be bringing in, and John Clues as well will be informing us.
Yeah, because there is. So what we'll do is put out information, because the regulator, if you go onto the regulator's website, there's a training. I forget what we call it now. Basically, a training plan for board members around governance of pension funds, and you can go through that on with time to suit yourself to learn about the governance. One of the things that so we will send that out and provide information on that in the coming months. But John and I did want to have a further conversation about it. Like I say, do this training needs analysis and then issue a proper training plan for individuals.
I've done the TPR.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, I've done it.
Right.
The role is fly paper.
Okay, so okay.
Can I just, this is fine for board members, but what really worries me, has done for some time now, our committee members are not properly trained. And they're sitting there taking all the decisions about investments and all the rest of it, and also the responsibilities as trustees. Some of them don't actually see themselves as trustees, they should do. And I think we need to get back to basics on that. You know, when I first came onto the pension committee back in about 2008 years ago, I had to spend a whole year going for training to different programs and all the rest of it to be trained to sit on, and they don't do it now. And I think that's where the pension committee is more at risk from that than this board is at risk from this.
Yeah, and I think that the funny thing is that there's a great emphasis on us as the board being more trained than the fund committee.
And that should be the other way around.
Can I just come in there, Chair, Councillor? I think in terms of the chair of the pensions committee, he has made representations to encourage committee members to attend the fundamentals training that is provided by the LGA. And I think people have gone on that, whether they've all done it.
It used to be mandatory.
Yeah.
Well, you could not sit on it.
No.
I mean, when I was appointed to Whitby, then I had a year to sit for it, otherwise I would have been taken off.
Well,
And all that, probably the same yourself.
yeah, it was. Yeah, when I was on the committee, you had to.
Therefore, we need, what I'm saying here now is, as a board, I feel that we really need to get that committee properly trained in their functions and responsibilities as trustees of that committee and no other. And when they sit in that committee, they're a trustee of it, not somebody else.
Yeah. Can I add something to that? You're quite right. Right, Councillor Dan. Keith just reminded me that in the good governance recommendations, there is going to be requirements for training in those recommendations for trustees. So that will come out of those as well. So you're quite right in terms of what you said, Councillor Dare. There is going to be, I suppose, legislation requiring people to do that on committee.
Well, it can't come soon enough. Because I can't sit on a planning committee unless I'm trained to sit there.
Yeah, exactly.
Make a judgment.
And I think also the other thing is also the size of the fund as well. So you definitely do need to know what's.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So,
any further questions to John? If not, we'll move straight on to the recommendation, which is that the training program proposed by the independent advisor to the board, Appendix A, be approved. Right. Can I have votes for? Thank you very much. Carried. There's no abstentions. Right. The next item again is John's.
Yeah.
And this kind of puts everything together because this is the pension fund risk register.
Yeah.
So kind of looking at our main risks, and a lot we've talked about, you find is covered in here, but if there's anything we need to talk about or discuss, there is a work program and we can put that onto the work program. So John would like to take us.
Yeah, really just to say that obviously the cover report, we're required to look at the risk register every meeting. So we put this on the agenda, and really it's for members of the board to outline if they've got any concerns or issues. I mean, some of the main things we discussed today anyway, in terms of data improvements and of such like. Obviously, a high risk is resources, which is always on there as a risk. And we've said what we're trying to do to alleviate that. And that has been highlighted to the Pensions Committee, and the concerns that were raised last time. Sorry, I shouldn't say concerns. The subject in relation to resources that were raised with Pensions Committee did go to committee, and there needs to be a review of resources, etc. So that has been accepted, and I think it's fair to say so that you and I have been tasked to look at that.
Yeah.
So if there's any other risks that you want to pick up from that, then please please ask. My finance colleagues are here in relation to
The money.
some of the financial risks, and I would like to hand over to those to pass the book and highlight. Pass it over to my colleagues.
Same point as John's made. So we do regularly monitor the risks that are set out here, assess them, and ensure that we're carrying out the control activities that we've set out against each risk. And just happy to answer any questions or any concerns people have got.
Well, obviously, the turmoil at the moment will concern everybody, but I think we're in a pretty good place ourselves as a pension fund.
And I think also for new members, what you recognize is that some of the risks will always be high simply because of the impact that they'll have. So even though with the controls that might take them to low, but it's always going to be high because there's also external forces that will. All right. Any further questions? If not, can I have a second for the recommendation on page 3? And can I have a vote for those in favour? Thank you very much, Carrie. Thank you. And I'm sure John is quite happy about this. It's that one to last item, which is the work programme.
Yeah, I mean, the work programme stands as it says at the moment. I think one of the things that I need to bring to you is around cybersecurity. And I was hoping to bring that at this particular meeting. Probably you might be thankful I haven't really. So, because I did think it was going to be quite an easy report to write, and I started to write it, and I found that it's not quite as straightforward as I thought. So, it does need a bit more work. So, I will be hoping to bring that to you for December. Also, put in good governance. That's been. Depending on where we get to and the recommendations and what the Department for Levelling Up decide, then we will need to bring a report on that. Whether I can bring it in December is relates to the department and the recommendations that might come out, because I believe there's going to be some consultation on it. The other thing that's been hanging around for a while is the pension regulators code of practice. And I suppose there's a new code that's been drafted and has been out to consultation. It had consultation and then was, I wouldn't say withdrawn, but they went back to consider some of the comments that's made. They're going to redrafting that, and a further consultation may be held. That will be really important when it comes out, because it will require pension funds to do various things, and it will be quite a piece of work for us to measure ourselves against that code when it is finally put in place. So it's almost wait and see on that one. So they're the ones that I've got put in. If there's anything else you would like me to bring to you, I think we've discussed about a report around scheme employers, and I can put that on the agenda maybe for December or for the next meeting. So if there's anything else that we can talk about, I generally also speak to John, and we'll talk through some of the issues that are ongoing and what we think yourselves need to be made aware of. Hence, obviously, the pension dashboard report. So, but the thing is, if you want to see something from me specifically, I try and think of the main things that you need to do, but clearly as a board you want to identify some things that
where and how do we, there's a synergy between the committee, the pensions committee, board, how does that simulate itself? How does that bring itself together? And I sometimes think that, I sat on the pensions committee for a heck of a long time, and the board was there, or came into being during that time, but the committee was never, the board was not pushing down, and the committee wasn't pushing up. And I think there must be aspects of it that there should be a continuous program, whatever the board and the committee. And the committee is the important part of the investment side, and that's working, and everybody's working to that. But if we've got two functions, then we need to know where they join up.
Actually, I think I'll agree with you, because what we've been doing is one of the recommendation is that we kind of have the same amount of meetings as the pension fund committee. We've had the pension fund chair come, Councillor Kerry, come. We've made a recommendation which was carried at the pension fund, which just to have a look at the resourcing around the area. So there is now, I think, a lot of this thing has been about the evolution of the pension board, as well as how we're going to connect with the pension fund. So now that we've got, I mean, I'm for closer working, and so is Councillor Kerry. So I think that is happening. But however, some of the officers, including John and Sarah, I think, and Keith, you go to the pension fund meetings. So you are that link. But I'll let you guys explain a lot more if I've missed anything.
I think the link is a bit different. I think the link, the committee is made up of trustees, and I think it's not fair for us to put all the pressure through the officers. I think there should be a different sort of formality of link between the board and the trustees, just to assist in the bringing together of what we're trying to do. And I mean, it doesn't have to be big, but we've got to appreciate each other. And if we've got something to say to the committee or the trustees, as I would call them, then, and they've got something to say to us, we can bring it together for the good of the whole.
Absolutely.
I mean, Chair, the one thing we could do perhaps as part of a regular thing is to look at what committee reports have been considered since the board last met. So maybe we put on a regular item that just does a sort of one-line summary of each of the committee reports or each of the committee meetings.
Maybe ask the chair of the committee to come along.
Certainly Councillor Kerry's attended, I think.
And presented. I mean, if that just so that it gets him. And also, I think it should give him strength in his committee as well. Say the board has asked me to do this, or requested this of me, to give him a bit of strength in doing what he has to do, which is not easy all the time, having I done it for a few years.
An annual report on the pension board activities goes to committee. So there's, John Rayson writes an annual report, and that goes the other way. So there is going to be better links, I think.
Not that I want to give admin work.
No, it's just
get that joined up feeling.
Yeah.
But can I suggest sorry, I was just thinking maybe we should bring a valuation report to the board in December.
That's too early.
Would it be? Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll put one on the agenda for March, probably, as Keith suggested.
Any further questions? No, I formally move that we formally move the work programme recommendation, which is on page 72. That do any members require any amendments to the work programme? I think we've talked through a few of the amendments, and hopefully those will be followed through. And if there isn't any other business, is there any other business? If not, sorry, excuse me, that's my stomach. If not, that concludes the business of the board meeting. And I'd like to thank all members and officers for their contribution and formally close the meeting. Thank you. Please end the live stream.
Yeah.